And we're back. We're back in the saddle again, boys. It's the ALOB basketball crew. We argued amongst ourselves whether we wanted to talk draft or Knicks. We're going to keep it NBA draft style, people. The draft is Thursday, NBA draft. We're not going to be talking NFL this time, hopefully. And we got the guys, so let's run it. We'll do rounds and pounds. We got GP Smooth, Greg Poon. Greggy, how you doing, brother?
Hey, Jake, what's going on? Good to be back.
Representing your Boston Eagles, you got Jerome Robinson. Maybe we'll talk about him. Maybe we won't. Quick thoughts?
First overall pick.
Okay. Hot takes off the bat. We'll shoot it to your big bro, Kenny Poon, Villanova repping in the draft big time this year. Ken, what's up?
Yeah, Villanova's got a few more prospects than BC. We got my boy Mikal Bridges, Dante DiVincenzo, Jalen Brunson, National Player of the Year, and Omari Spellman, all in the draft this year. So we might talk about them. I know a lot about them. Watched all the games this year, went to the national championship, so I know some stuff.
First take of the episode, Omari Spellman. Is he a first-round pick, Ken? Go!
End of the first round. Yeah, okay. I think he could be that 30th pick.
All right. Well, no hot take there. Thanks, Ken. And our final correspondent, Tommy P, Tommy Pickles, the ham bone, Woogie Woogislowski. He doesn't respond to any of those. Tom Piccolo and his Bucknell Bisons. Any Bisons in the draft, Tom?
Jake, there are not a lot of Bisons in the draft. And as such, I did not watch a ton of college basketball. So I'd take all my opinions with a grain of salt. I can't even spell Spellman.
You're like the analytics guy. Nice Spellman joke. You're the analytics guy. We're saying names and faces. Greg's gonna say that guy can ball, and you're gonna say, his VORP says no, and we'll say, okay, let's move along from that, I guess.
You stole my catchphrase, but I'm still gonna say it.
The famous VORP catchphrase. Well, let's start. We did a mock, and we dug deeper than we normally do. As if any of the Talkin Yanks listeners are out there, we appreciate y'all. Talkin Knicks, shout out. We went around to, well, actually you guys did all the work on this, so I'm just being a big old jerk per usual. But we went to what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different websites and reviewed their mock drafts, and we got their averages. So we've got kind of how the world is viewing these prospects, and we did our own mock draft. Let's just start at the top. We'll kick it around to you, big Greggy. Let's just talk about the big six at first, because everyone's kind of got them in the top 5, or the top 6 even. That's why they call them the big 6. Ayton, Doncic, Bagley, Jackson, Bamba, Porter. Greg, where are you on these guys? Who do you like? Who do you dislike? What teams line up? What do you think?
That was a lot of questions.
Yeah, baby, that's how we do it.
Yeah, I mean, I like Ayton. I think everybody likes Ayton. This guy's a big boy. Put up 20 and 10 in college as a freshman. In college, 20 and 10 means something. Those are just not common numbers. If you're scoring 20 points, you're one of the top 15 scorers in the country. I bet. I don't know if that's a fact, but I'm going to say it.
Would be.
Doncic, Kenny, that's his boy. He's been high on him all year. You hear legends of this guy being like a young gun in Europe, just running the show. So you got to assume he's something. Sounds like there's something there. Bagley, ACC Player of the Year as a freshman. Can't knock that. Jackson's the wild card. He wasn't the star player at Michigan State, but he's just one of those guys who you say, this guy's got a body on him. He's athletic. He's tall. He can jump. He can shoot. So he seems to have the package. Mo Bamba, just a freak of nature. Really tall. Can jump. Got a nice little stroke to him. And then the actual wild card, even more so than Jaren Jackson, Michael Porter Jr. was, I think, the top player coming out of high school and just got injured, played like 2 games. I don't know if you guys saw him at the end of the season, but he looked like one of the worst players I've ever seen in my entire life. But you look at this guy, he's 6'10", and he looks like he can move. Can move like a guard. You just got to assume if he's not injury prone, which jury's still out on that, and if he is capable playing basketball, and he was just rusty at the end of the year from sitting out the whole entire season. And if this guy falls, someone's getting a steal. And that's my rundown. I don't have the teams that they line up with. I'll let someone else handle that.
Yeah, so guys, as someone who didn't watch a lot of college basketball, the thing that jumps out to me there, and I know a lot of analysts have talked about this, is just the way the NBA is right now. It has really de-emphasized the importance of big men. And you look at that top 6 that you just ran down there, and 4 out of the 6 are bigs, and 2 are wings. And we know like wings are so important in today's NBA. The 2 wings being Doncic and Michael Porter Jr.
Who's
so
6'10" still.
Yeah, big wings, but yeah, no, I mean that's particularly valuable. But I mean, I look at a guy like Ayton, like Bagley, like Jaren Jackson Jr., and like they all have their strengths and weaknesses. But at the end of the day, like, aren't bigs just straight up less valuable than wings at this point? How are we justifying these rankings? Is it just I saw Ayton put up 20 and 10, and that's traditionally been worth the number 1 overall pick?
So I think the difference now, Tom, is that a lot of these bigs can stroke it, right? They're coming up in an age where all of them, maybe they're not great shooters, but they're capable shooters. And that's a game changer. And, you know, I know that the game has cycled into an era when, you know, small, versatile is better, but maybe, and the Knicks tried this terribly this year, but maybe to counteract that, some teams start getting, you know, bigger players who are also versatile. So you're looking at a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr. or Wendell Carter Jr., who they're bigger, they can shoot it a little bit, they can maybe play some defense on the perimeter, and maybe by throwing more big bodies out there, you counteract what some of the other teams are doing going small, because those small guys can't necessarily guard these big guys. So I'm not saying that that's necessarily the answer, but that could be one strategy.
So here's my question. Am I the only one here who would take Doncic over Ayton with the 1st overall pick?
I would.
I'm undecided. I don't know.
Noodle would.
Yeah, vote is in.
I mean, look, I mentioned I didn't watch a lot of college ball. I've said it like 5 times already, so that's kind of going to be my thing. But I did watch Doncic play some international ball, and like we saw him play with Goran Dragic. We saw him play against current NBA players. He went toe-to-toe with Porzingis. And so, like, he was able to stick with him and, like, take it to him at points. So, like, I don't know. I understand, like, the concerns around Doncic's athleticism. But I don't know. Like, from what I've seen, it hasn't hampered him. He's so skilled. He's still crazy young, and he's so accomplished at this point. Like, I just think with the way the league is going, to have a big playmaking wing like that who can shoot the 3, like I'm going to take that every time, and I'm going to worry less about his defensive deficiencies, because a lot of these bigs, the knocks on them are a lack of defensive awareness. I've heard that about Ayton. I've heard it about Bagley. And so, yeah, like if I have a big playmaking wing, I'm going to take that 1st overall, no question.
Yeah, and Tom, I think what you're dancing around is kind of the big idea that it's kind of unfortunate that sports is this way, because it's guys fighting for their job, but Ayton is the safest pick. Ayton is a big dude. He runs the floor good. They compare him to David Robinson. He's just a monster, and he can stroke it a little bit. We don't know to what degree. But if the Suns bring him in, then you start saying, okay, Devin Booker, Ayton down low, we kind of got the start of something. With Doncic, it is interesting because I think he's the guy that really needs the keys to the kingdom. I think he plays a point forward type. I've heard comparisons to Harden, which I know Greg gets going on. But you're absolutely right. With these bigs, it's a little bit limiting risk because, and I don't want to take us too far from these top tier guys, but like, you know, Trae Young's obviously getting all these Steph Curry comparisons. And if you're a GM and you think you can get him there, you know, in today's NBA, shouldn't that be the pick you want to make? But at the end of the day, if Trae Young turns out to be a 35% three-point shooter, now you've got a 6'2" shooting point guard who's a liability on defense. So I think it's a limiting risk conversation, but I don't know. Ken, Greg?
I got a good point, but I'll let Kenny go first.
Right.
So I was going to say, I think that Doncic is he's the least risky of all of them. you know, because he's been playing against better competition and he's been successful. He MVP of the whatever league he's playing in. So he is proven against better competition. And I know you're saying that kind of conventional wisdom is a big guy is safer, but you know, in this day and age when they're doing a lot more switching and they're playing smaller lineups, is it less risky to have a big guy? Because a lot of the times some of these big guys can't get off the end of the bench during crunch time just because they can't chase the perimeter and, you know, they can't bring the defense that you need in that situation. So I think, like Tom said, having a playmaking wing is, you know, the safest pick. And I have heard the, you know, Harden comparisons. I've heard the Manu Ginobili comparisons. And I think that this is a guy that, you know, we're in a league where you want to have as many ball handlers on the court as possible. So I think he could play with a point guard because he has the size to defend wings. So he could play with another point guard. He can bring the ball up sometimes. The point guard can bring the ball up sometimes. If you watch the Cavs during the playoffs, LeBron was bringing the ball up every time. So, like, we're not in an age where there's, you know, huge distinction between all of the positions where the point guard is the one bringing it up and running the plays and the center is you know, down in the paint. We're in an era where everything is switchable. You know, centers are shooting threes and point guards are playing, you know, 3 or 4 at a time. So I think that, like Tom said, I think Doncic is the top pick in my mind, and I also think he's a safer pick. So Greg, prove me wrong.
All right. So while I agree with you guys that centers are becoming less valued, I think you guys are really overstating it. There's a lot of teams that play a lot of big guys. I mean, you're not going to beat the Warriors with Ayton, but I do not think that the team picking first overall is planning on how to beat the Warriors right now. You know, there's a lot of teams that, you know, Cousins is still a star. Porzingis was a star. Al Horford's still one of the better players on the Celtics. Joel Embiid. A lot of these teams are center-centric, if you will.
Oh,
wow.
So, I mean, centers may be less valuable, but less valuable when you're trying to beat the best teams in the entire league. But I don't think everybody should be game planning for the Warriors.
And I completely agree with that, Greg. The only thing is that, like, we're coming out of we just watched 3 months of playoffs where we stopped kind of watching basketball. We've talked about it ourselves, and it was just hunting mismatches. It wasn't just the finals. It was the entirety of the playoffs. And so, like, if you want to make any noise in the playoffs, like, you have to be prepared to face that kind of offense where you just put teams into pick and rolls and try and get the mismatches that you want. And guys like, I mean, Marvin Bagley is the perfect example. Like, he's the kind of guy who just can't really defend the perimeter. Despite, I mean, at this point, it's tough to say that about like a 19-year-old kid, but like all we can kind of go off of is what they've showed so far. And like Bagley is the kind of guy you would attack in the playoffs, and he doesn't project to be someone who's going to be able to guard the perimeter later in his career. So Bagley in our mock draft, he went 3rd to the Hawks. Greg, you picked him. What I'm just curious, like, what you see in him. I've heard some people even argue that Wendell Carter, his teammate at Duke, is like a safer pick. Maybe he's got a higher basement, lower ceiling situation going. But like, I'm curious what any of you guys see in Bagley, because I'm kind of skeptical.
Tom, I want to dig Greg's hole a little deeper before he goes. I heard during the draft scouting process that unnamed Duke teammates were saying that Wendell Carter was better than Bagley, like, all around, which the fact you could even get him to say something like that says something. So, Greg, again, try to fight out of this hole.
Honestly, I think I'm on record as saying that I thought Wendell Carter was going to go before Marvin Bagley.
We passed it to the wrong guy.
I just happened to pick Bagley before Carter in the mock draft. Can you guys verify that? I'm pretty sure I said that at one point.
It looks like we passed it to Quinn Cook in the final seconds.
But anyways, Marvin Bagley can score the basketball. I think you got a Jahlil Okafor situation going on. This guy's an offensive savant and he boards. So, I mean, people don't look at defense enough, you know? You're not going to pick a one-way defensive player in the first round. I don't think. You're not seeing people picking Draymonds and Tony Allens in the first round, even though those are the valuable people. Although Draymond does way more than play defense nowadays.
And I'll say on Greg's part of Bagley's appeal to a lot of people, I think, is that he just goes out there and tries really hard. And he's athletic and he tries hard, and that'll get you somewhere. At the very least, it's unlikely that he's going to be a terrible NBA player, right? Just because he's got more athleticism than a lot of people, and he's got a motor to at the very least, get boards, get rebounds, get tip-ins, and be, a rim-running big man. Well, I don't think he's huge, but he could be a pick-and-roll threat on the alley-oop. So I don't think, that he's ever going to be a bust just because of that motor. I
think that the GMs are saying, what are the odds that he's going to be Jahlil Okafor? Jahlil Okafor already did that. So statistically, it won't happen again.
They're less, sure.
Yeah.
And I've been laughing because it sounds like from the podcast I've been listening to that the Kings are they're leaning towards Bagley just because he's willing to send medical records and work out for them. And like so few of these top prospects are. So, I mean, yeah, I think Bagley will go in the top 3. I think the top 3 in some order will be Ayton, Doncic, and Bagley. And then the next pick on our mock was Jaren Jackson Jr. And guys, I have questions. Like,
isn't that such a Grizzlies pick, by the way? Like, okay, yeah, everyone's kind of saying that this guy should be pretty good. He's what we know from Michigan. I mean, he wasn't. This is a classic. I'll give the ESPN take. This guy wasn't even the best player on his college team. I mean, he was mostly deferring to Bridges and, Coach Izzo doing his thing at Mich State. What are your questions, Tom? I mean, what's his game? What does he turn out to be? What's the player comp?
Well, look, I understand that he is straight up the youngest player in the draft, and that there's something to that. But like, he was a role player on Michigan State. He played 20 minutes a game, and you want your top 3, top 4, top 5 pick to have been like the man, to have had the confidence, the swagger to be the man on his team. And I don't know, like Jackson, does he project? I know a lot of the analytics nerds that I'm, pigeonholed to be, they love this guy because of his switchability and his ability to shoot, his stroke. I watched some highlights. He shoots it right in front of his face. Like, I can't imagine him being able to get that off with any consistency in the NBA with actual athletes defending him. But I don't know, like his ceiling to me, people are saying Al Horford's ceiling. And that sounds like really optimistic to me. I just don't see him being anything more than a very, like maybe even an elite role player in the NBA. Wow. And there are other guys on the board with just much higher upside. So like again, this is a situation with Jackson where he has a high floor, like he won't be a bust, but his ceiling just isn't that high to me. And there are guys like Trae Young, like Bamba, like Michael Porter Jr., who just have much higher ceilings.
I think you're looking at a Frank Ntilikina situation, Tom. You're just picking the young guy with potential. Maybe he didn't post stats last year, but he did. He was a basketball player in a league. So now you're going to draft him based off potential.
Yeah, I'll say all like the analytics that I've seen is he's a pretty complete player. And, he's from what I understand, he's an excellent shot blocker, a good defensive player. But other than that, he doesn't do anything great, but he's going to be a good player for someone. So maybe it is what you're saying, that he's a pretty safe pick. And, if he develops all this other stuff, I think he could be, an all-star in this league. But again, all of this is, based on the idea that he's the youngest player in the draft and he has all, the makings to be a great player. So we'll see what happens. That's what the draft's all about.
It's pretty intriguing. A couple things that have just jumped to my mind because Greg, I'll go around the horn. Greg, you mentioned keeping up with Golden State. I think it's interesting. Oh, Noodle the Doodle thinks it's interesting too, that, Houston's the only team that's really tried to keep up with Golden State and Cleveland, but they've got that one LeBron guy that doesn't come to every draft. But, we haven't seen we haven't seen Golden State run into a complete team that has like a good big man. And we've always wondered, we've seen Gobert go up against him, do something like that. It's interesting to see how these big guys are going to play out. And like you said, Tom just gave the Jaren Jackson comparison to Al Horford. I know that Wendell Carter's getting some Al Horford comparisons. There's a couple guys a little deeper in the draft, Robert Williams. And these guys do have kind of a traditional power forward center thing to them. And are these guys going to be able to stick? And it basically turns into, like we touched upon, their defense. Because now if you're a big man who can't stay with a guard after a screen, you're basically toast. You're almost useless. So I think we're all dancing around it, but drafting bigs are scary. What's the line between rim protector? So like, that's what the Suns are going to be saying, like, oh, Ayton can protect the rim. He's a 7-footer, blah, blah, blah. But if he gets switched on to 1s and 2s and he can't do anything, like was mentioned, he could end up on the bench. So it's a big man philosophy thing. I'll pass it back to you, Kenny. And the one name that we haven't mentioned, who's the biggest freak big of them all, Mo Bamba. You're 7 foot with 8 feet arms. Are you big enough to stay with bigs? Are you quick enough to stay with smalls?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know why I can't get myself excited about Bamba. Like, he has a ceiling that's like Gobert-esque, and when you have a traditional big like that, you need him to be a rim protector. Like, you need him to be able to affect shots at the rim, to be a help defender, and Bamba projects to be able to do that just with his tools. I watched all these like Draft Express ESPN videos that show all the highlights and sort of the weaknesses and the strengths of these players. And one of Bamba's weaknesses seemed to be like physicality, and like that's just something I need as a baseline for my bigs. And that scared me with a few of these guys where they were describing them as soft. They were even saying like DeAndre Ayton kind of falls in love with his jumper and doesn't like to bang down low despite his like chiseled frame. And that kind of stuff really bothers me when you're talking about bigs. Like Wendell Carter Jr. is the one guy who they say like uses his body, uses his frame, and just bangs down low. Bamba, to me, he really scares me. Like I don't know what you're getting with him. I just don't see him panning out as like a Gobert. I think his bust potential is really high.
So, Tom, I actually have ESPN analytics for bust potential in front of me. Mo Bamba, 12%, which is kind of middle of the pack in terms of the lottery players, but he also has the lowest all-star percentage, which is 7%. So, no, you're not wrong that he has some question marks. And for me, like the biggest thing is I feel like he jumped up a lot of draft boards recently because of a video of him shooting uncontested 3-pointers, which always makes me nervous. It reminds me of, I think it was Yan Jianlian, who had the workout against the chair, and everyone fell in love with him, and then he got picked pretty high and just wasn't a good player. So, I think you're right to be concerned about him, and I have similar concerns about him. I think he's has the potential to be a good player, but I think the way that he is rising up draft boards right now is kind of unwarranted, just because of those question marks. Like he's a very thin player, and if he's going to be the one guarding the post, and I know we're saying people are getting away from the post a little bit, but like Greg mentioned, there are plenty of post players out there. Like I see him getting tossed around by Embiid, and on the flip side, if they're playing the Warriors, I don't think he can, move Draymond Green in the post, and I don't think he can move Al Horford in the post offensively. So, I think you're right that there are plenty of questions about him.
Greggy, final thoughts?
I mean, I think Mo Bamba was a very highly touted high school prospect. I think he was top 5, and he averaged a double-double. And he shot almost 70% from the line, which is, I mean, college players really aren't very good at shooting free throws, if we're being honest with each other. And then this guy, he's tall, and he's got an 8-foot long wingspan. So, again, you're just drafting him, hoping he could put some meat on those bones, and then you got a tree trunk in the middle of your defense for years to come.
And Kenny mentioned people having good workouts against a chair. I've had some bad workouts against a chair. So give Yi Jianlian some love where he deserves it. We as I mentioned, we we did our mock draft. I know Tom hinted towards Greg Love and Marvin Bagley, and Bagley backed off. We went Ayton, Doncic, Bagley, Jackson, Bamba, Porter, and also was mentioned. So the averaged out the 8 websites we went to: ESPN, Ringer, Bleacher Report, NBA Draft.net, SI, CBS Sports, Washington Post, Sporting News. We got the averages from there. Ayton's the consensus one. Bagley, they actually have going higher than Doncic in most of the drafts. And again, maybe that's because they'll only share medical records. Jackson, Bamba, Porter. Let's go through the rest of this lottery. I'll read what our picks were as a team. We also had Chris Fujimoto involved in this, who you guys have heard from before, and Kevin McGovern, who we will rip on in a little bit. We went 7. We went Trae Young, so Wendell Carter, Bridges, Zaire Smith, Kevin Knox, Keita Bates-Diop, which, if you were wondering why we were going to yell at Kevin McGovern, we're there. Robert Williams, and that rounds out the lottery. In that kind of range, and here's a couple other guys we need to mention because I think we would have liked to see him up there. But Miles Bridges, Kyrie Thomas, Gilgeous-Alexander, Sexton, and Lonnie Walker. Of that tier, I mean, there's like 10 players there. Who really jumps out to you guys, or who do you think is a good fit somewhere, or someone you feel needs more love, or someone feels you need less love? Kenny?
To be honest with you, Jake, I was looking at this website over here, looking at some stuff, and didn't listen to anything you just said.
I'll take it then.
Proud of you.
What website
Greg?
were you looking at?
I think Keita Bates-Diop deserves less love. No, I'm just kidding. Colin Sexton, that's a name that's been getting thrown up there in the top 10 all season long. This guy was a stud at Alabama. He showed that he can lead an actual basketball team. He hit some game winners he hit one game winner in the SEC tournament. And then he looks like he shows up. And I know college is a different
3 versus 5 victory. Bunch of guys fouled out. No, you guys don't watch college basketball?
I remember that game. I missed the first part.
I'm pretty sure Kenny deferred on his turn, and I was supposed to talk. Anyways, so I know college is a different game from the NBA, and maybe Sexton is like a Shabazz Napier, where he's got the college game, he can dominate, but it won't translate. But Shabazz shot up to the first round, and Sexton doing it as a freshman, that'll shoot him up into the top 10, I think.
Well, maybe LeBron will say he wants Sexton. You never know.
Exactly. That'll put him at number 8, right? That's where the Nets are.
Yeah. So Jake, on your pick, for number 7, you took Trae Young to Chicago, and I gotta say, I just watched a bunch of film of his strengths and weaknesses, and I love him. Like, I think he's going to be really good, and he's exactly where the league is going. I think. Obviously with the off the dribble shooting, but not just that. It's really his playmaking too. He led the nation in assists. Like, people are concerned about his defense, and that's fair. But do you know how many point guards are horrible at defense? Like Dame Lillard, Kyrie Irving, Russell Westbrook's bad at defense, and it doesn't stop them from being really productive players. So I'm not saying Trae Young is going to average a triple-double and be the default MVP of the league, but I'm so impressed with his ability to shoot off the dribble, to come off screens, to like dribble, not necessarily in traffic because he's so slight, he kind of gets bumped off his spot a lot. But I mean, you got to think he's going to bulk up a little. I mean, think how skinny Mike Conley Jr. was coming out of high school or coming out of college. He was tiny, and now he holds on just fine. So like, I just think Trae Young has real superstar potential, and I think he's going to make some team really happy if he falls to 7.
So I think this maybe it was something that Greg used to say. Maybe it was you, Tom. Maybe it was you, Jake. I don't know. But someone used to say there's a difference between being bad at defense and not being capable of playing defense. And I think with his size and is just kind of frail body size, like I just don't know that he is capable of being a good defender in this league.
And I agree, Kenny. I agree that he's probably incapable of playing good defense. I just would question like how important point guard defense really is. Like, I mean, Steph Curry isn't a bad defender, but he's the weak point of the Warriors defense. Like the point guard's defense is not nearly as valuable as the wing defense, the rim protection from the bigs. Like that's really what saves a defense. That's what makes a defense good. Like look at the Spurs always have a top-ranked defense. The Celtics had a top-ranked defense with Kyrie, with Tony Parker or Patty Mills. Like it doesn't matter that much to me. I don't think it's just nearly as valuable as having strong defenders in the front court.
Hey Ken, you know who said that? It was Jeff Hornacek. He said, "I don't think the Knicks are capable of playing good defense." So.
Oh, that's harsh.
He said that when they had Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
And that was the coach of the basketball team.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
So think about that.
Yeah, I wish I didn't say that.
Yeah. And now he's gone and fired for good reason.
Yep.
Kenny, I'm gonna send one at you, so get off your other websites. But last year everyone was stoked about the point guard class. It was Fultz, Lonzo Ball, De'Aaron Fox, Frank Nitti, Dennis Smith. Everyone was talking about how these were going to be kind of next level guys. Call me crazy, call me maybe. I'm looking at Trae Young, Sexton, Gilgeous-Alexander. I think he's a total wild card. He showed some great games, but I don't know. When you compare Colin Sexton to De'Aaron Fox for me, I kind of like Sexton. I think Fox is a little quicker, but I think Sexton has a little more developed jump shot at this point. And I mean, what did he go last year? Fox went 5, and in our mock draft, Sexton slipped a little bit because we saw some fit misses. Fit misses, is that a phrase? But Ken, what do you comparing the point guard classes from the last 2 years? I think 2017 had more bodies, like I just mentioned, but I don't know. Sexton and Trae Young, these guys could be really good.
Yeah, I mean, I still. I don't know if I agree with you on De'Aaron Fox or Colin Sexton over De'Aaron Fox. I think Fox is still a young player and he showed flashes last year. Again, he had the misfortune of being drafted by the Kings, so in another situation maybe he's already an all-star. Who knows? But I'm on the record as not being a huge Colin Sexton fan. Part of that is that I think he got a technical against Villanova in the round of 32 when his team was down like 30 points after Mikal Bridges had just scored like 20 points in a 5-minute span, and he just started talking that crapola to Mikal and got a tech. So that's part of my bitterness. But the other thing is he's another guy that they say he could be a great defender, but he's just so slight of frame that maybe he grows into his body a little more and puts on some muscle, but right now he's not big enough for me to be confident that he'll end up being a great defender. And he has a decent shot, but I would prefer that my point guard be a better shooter. So there's that. And then we talked about Trae Young. I have concerns about defense, but like Tom, I think that offensively he has the potential to do something special. I know there's been, for all the people that say there's Steph Curry potential, there's also people that say, there's Jimmer, there's Buddy Hield. But I think Trae Young is closer to Steph than to those other guys. And he's also much younger than any of those guys. I know Curry, I think, went 4 years. Buddy Hield went 4 years. Jimmer Fredette went 4 years. Trae Young is a freshman, and he also, I think, led the country in assists. So he's not just a shooter. He has the ability to pass. I know his assists or his turnovers were high late in the season, but that's because he was passing to college players instead of NBA players, and he was also forcing a lot of shots. Maybe shot selection is an issue, but he has the capability to hit shots. So I do think he is has the potential to be a special offensive player. Again, I worry about the defense, but overall, I would still take last year's point guards over this year's, just because whenever you get to the draft, there's always optimism. We're always saying that this guy's going to be the next great thing, And every year, of the top 10 picks, how many of them end up being all-stars, one or two? So I think it's easy to get excited about this and get, as Tom would say, your rose-colored glasses on for prospects. But I think it's tougher to compare people who were drafted previously without getting that kind of bias towards the recency.
Well, look, I want to come at you guys with I'm kind of going to beat a similar drum to the one I did before about wings, because there's a player here that I think is a little controversial in this group that I really like, and that's Kevin Knox out of Kentucky. He's a full year younger than Michael Porter Jr., which is surprising to me. He's 6'9". He's got a 7-foot wingspan, and he can catch and shoot a bit from three. He can pull up off the dribble, more mid-range style. He kind of reminds me of Rudy Gay a little bit. And, Rudy Gay kind of got knocked for his shot selection a little bit throughout his career and maybe even his defense. But, I mean, if we're talking about in the 9, 10, 11 range, like, I honestly wouldn't be upset if the Knicks took a wing. Like, I'm all in on wings right now. If it were down to Mikal Bridges or Knox, I'm curious what you guys think from the Knicks perspective, because I like trying Frank at the point guard. I don't think that they need to pick another point guard unless Trae Young falls to them. Then that might be, for me, that's worth it. That's worth taking that flyer. But I assume Young's going to be picked before then. So, yeah, I'm curious what you guys think the Knicks should do given the options that they'll most likely have. So we're talking Wendell Carter Jr., Mikal Bridges, Kevin Knox, those guys. How do you guys think the Knicks should play this one?
I think my one knock on Knox.
Oh, that's twice today.
Is that when you think of Kentucky, I personally think Gilgeous-Alexander was the guy, and that may be more so that he was the one who was balling out in the SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament. As it turns out, Kevin Knox was actually the leading scorer on the team. But you get end of the year is the last thing you remember. And Gilgeous-Alexander is the guy on Kentucky in my head. And the second thing is that this Kentucky team was not a typical Kentucky team. They lost 11 games. So, how good are these Kentucky guys, Plus, we hate Kentucky to begin with, so we don't want them on our team. And that being said, Kenny, why are we picking Mikal?
Oh, you guys know I was going Mikal this whole time because he's my boy. So I think the big thing about Mikal is what you're getting, and people are looking at that as a negative because he's 22, so people think he has no room to develop, which I think is kind of crazy because once you get into the NBA, you're still only 22. You have room to develop. You're going to be on an NBA schedule. You're going to be with NBA trainers, and so you have more upside. For Knox, what are you hoping for? Because right now he's not the player that Mikal Bridges is. So he's going to go in next year, and I can just about guarantee you that Mikal Bridges will have a better season. And I think your hope is that Knox, on your average scenario, ends up being Mikal Bridges, right? He ends up being a guy who can defend multiple positions and hit open threes. Like, maybe you have more upside, but you also have the chance that he never reaches Mikal Bridges. So it just seems like a safer pick to me to take Mikal just because you know what you're getting, and he's a plug-and-play player that can play in any system. He's a guy that, we took Frank as a project, and, I don't know if we're comfortable having, 3 or 4 guys that we're working to develop, or if it would be, at least in my opinion, it would be better to have, some guys that are just ready to play. So like right now we have Moutier, maybe we try to develop him. We have Frank, we're definitely trying to develop him. And, we have a bunch of like flyers on guys like Troy Williams and that, maybe we're trying to develop. And I think it would be useful to have a guy that's just there. He's good, he's capable, and he's old for the drafts, but not old for the NBA. He's still very young. So that's my 2 cents.
So I'm not surprised that Kenny went with the Villanova guy. Jake, I want to hear your take. Who are you taking if you're the Knicks?
I'm not a huge Knox guy when we're talking those wings. Miles Bridges has to get mentioned too. A lot of people like him. I think I mean, Knox and Michael Bridges, I don't think that's a conversation. I think it's Bridges. He has incredible length. I don't think Knox has the athleticism. You mentioned Rudy Gay, and it could just be my UConn bias, but Knox is nowhere near the athlete a young Rudy Gay was. The player comp that I saw with Knox that I actually liked, and it almost made too much sense to me, was Tobias Harris, who I think they're both kind of that awkward small forward, power forward that used to be shunned upon. Now it totally has a role in this league. But at the same time, have we seen Tobias Harris do what Tobias Harris does in important games that really matter? We've seen him get buckets for the Magic, Pistons, and Clippers in some games and usually losing. So I don't want that to be a huge knock on Tobias. I like Tobias. I think Bridges just has a much bigger realm of what he can become.
What's a good comp for Mikal Bridges?
I mean, a Falcon. His arms nuts.
We'll go with Robert Covington, except a little bit better.
Robert Covington, Chris Middleton, the very poor man's Kawhi. What was that?
Otto Porter.
The very poor man's Kawhi Leonard. That's Kawhi Leonard is the dream scenario, the 1% chance that he makes it to that level, because he's a long, versatile defender who can shoot some, but hasn't developed the one-on-one game. So Covington's a fair comp, and those other guys I said, but just a defensive guy who can shoot at the core, and with the possibility that he develops into some other skills in the NBA.
I mean, it is tough for the Knicks, not to go too long on them, but we like to talk Knicks.
Talking Knicks crew.
Their biggest need is a wing, and by the time you get to 9, the really good wings are usually taken, right? It's such a valuable position, and most teams need wings. So the perfect wing is not usually just sitting there at 9. So I don't know. I'm going to be fascinated with how the Knicks pick. Yeah, I like Mikal Bridges. Kenny, you've talked to me. You've kind of brainwashed me into him over the months.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, just Knox's youth is still intriguing to me. Like I said, full year younger than Michael Porter Jr. He's a baby. He's showed some real skill. And so yeah, I'm between those two, I think, because I'm pretty set. Like I said, if Trae Young doesn't fall, I'm pretty set on taking a wing.
All right, you're not thinking about Wendell Carter, Tom?
I don't think so. First of all, I like his game, and I might like his game more than Bagley, like I mentioned before. I love that he grabs rebounds. I mean, just goes after him. And so as a replacement for Cantor, I could see him and KP getting along okay together. It's just I'm low on bigs right now. KP is gonna be a perfect 5 in the years to come if he can stay healthy. He protects the rim. He's a great rim protector, an elite rim protector. He can move his feet a little bit on the perimeter, but the risk of having him out there and getting exposed on one-on-one defense doesn't outweigh his rim protection. And plus he stretches the floor as a stretch 5. So I don't want too many centers on the roster stopping up minutes when KP could be taking those.
Yeah, I see it. I think Kenny has said it before, but if Cantor could play defense, he'd be a great fit next to Porzingis. And I mean, if you get a big like Carter who can play defense, maybe it might be pretty safe. I don't know if you're not going to win the championship with Wendell Carter and Porzingis getting a lot of time, but like I've said, Knicks shouldn't be trying to compete with the Warriors right now,
And look, Greg, if Carter is able to keep Porzingis from getting injured by allowing him not to have to bang with bigger bodies and get worn out during the regular season, then I'm all for that strategy. It's just when games do matter, I think Porzingis is going to be who you want at center, and it's tough to use the number 9 pick on someone who you don't think will be a part of your closing 5 potentially.
But I think I like Wendell Carter a lot, actually, and like Greg said, there are some holes in Kanter's game that don't really fit with Porzingis, and I don't think that Carter has those holes. The things that I particularly like about him is he's shown a decent ability to shoot from three, which Kanter's been working on. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. He's a good shot blocker, which Kanter, despite his size, is not. And, from everything that I've read, he has, quick lateral movement, quick feet, and, the potential to grow into a more perimeter-oriented big. So if he develops into a player who can, block shots when he's defending down low or, guard the perimeter when Porzingis is down low, then that's a very valuable guy to have next to Porzingis. And it's like I said before, it gives you size to throw at the other team on offense. So you have two big guys who aren't liabilities on defense and who, you're forcing the other team to guard. So I think that would create, pretty good mismatches. But again, this is all hypothetical because the Knicks tried to go big this year and it went terribly. And this is all based on, Wendell Carter being able to guard the perimeter some and Porzingis being able to guard the perimeter some, which, hasn't happened yet, but it's a possibility with Carter. And, that's something that I would be intrigued at seeing.
I think also that I'm sure we can all agree that the Knicks pick is going to be made for them in some sense, since a lot of these guys are coming off the board well before we're picking.
And that's we started getting a lot into fit and who's going to be available there. And I want to spin it back there, kind of to the teams. And we didn't really talk about this, so part of this speech is going to be me dragging it out so you guys can think of an answer. But what's a team, whether it's player fit or who's going to be available, or a team that you're really circling that you're interested in who they're going to pick? Mine's a little bit of a cop-out. I'm going Clippers just because they have 12 and 13 back-to-back. But like we mentioned kind of the tiers before. I mentioned the 6, and then I mentioned those other like 10 or so guys I like. I think the Clippers right now, they don't have any like franchise cornerstones. I think at 12 and 13, they're going to be able to take literally the top guys available on their board who they like. Like, again, in our mock draft, we had Sexton and Lonnie Walker. You could start building a backcourt that way. Whichever one of the wings or big slips. I'm just really excited to see what they do. A lot of teams are talking about them packaging those and move up, which would also be cool. But if I'm the Clippers, I'm probably standing pat and seeing what drops them because, hey, if Tom mentioned Kevin Knox, I'm sure some teams have him above Mikal Bridges. I mean, if you end up with Knox and Sexton or, Robert Williams, who's to say he's not better than Wendell Carter? And like Greg just mentioned with the Knicks, you almost you have the other teams taking out the risk for you. Like, okay, those 11 guys are going to be out of here. We love these two guys. Let's roll it. So that being said, Greggy, do you have a team or player fit that you're keeping your eyes on?
So one team I'm keeping my eyes on is the Wizards. The Wizards, their big thing these past couple of years is just absolutely no depth whatsoever. Last year, they were in a dogfight with the Celtics. They went to Game 7 in the second round, I think. And then Kelly Olynyk went off and won the game, which was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. But people forget that this was a very good team 2 years ago. And then this past year, maybe they lost in the first round, but John Wall was injured for a significant period of time. And there were stretches where they looked good. So, I mean, next year, who knows where LeBron is? The Wizards could be coming back. They could be another a contender in the East again, if you will. Maybe a contender, top 4 seed, whatever you want to call it. What happens in the East if LeBron's not there is anyone's guess. So if they pick, I don't know, what do they need? They need a backup point guard. They need a power forward. They just need something. They got 3 starters who you trust: John Wall, Bradley Beal, Otto Porter, and then Morris and Gortat are more wild cards at this point. So, I mean, if Robert Williams falls to the Wizards, then that's a big-time pick. I mean, I hate to steal your Robert Williams get.
You're good.
Spiel, but I think that'd be a good fit.
Kenny.
So The team I'm kind of been looking at a little bit is the 76ers, just because I'm not sure what direction they go. You know, they have Ben Simmons, they have Markelle Fultz. No one knows what's going on with Fultz, so like they probably don't need a point guard. If a point guard, if you know, say Trae Young or Colin Sexton falls in their lap, do they take them? I don't know that they do, just because they have those other guys. And at the same time, if a big falls to them, because we've been talking about, you know, this is a big base draft, do they take that guy? Because they have, you know, Saric and they have Embiid, and they have all of these guys who their game, well, not all of these guys, but they have Fultz and Simmons, whose games are predicated upon, you know, driving and passing, and you already have Embiid there. So I'm just not sure what direction they go with. I feel like kind of their dream scenario is the Mikal Bridges pick, because that's a safe pick where you have a wing. You know, he does a lot of the stuff that Robert Covington has, but you can never have enough wings, as Tom would like to say, playing defense. So if Bridges isn't there and he falls and the Knicks take him, I'm not sure which direction that Philly goes with.
And Bridges is the hometown guy.
Yep. Philly, represent. And you had a fun fact about that, Tom, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I was listening to Adrian Wojnarowski's podcast, and he said that that Mikal Bridges' mother is like the head of HR for the group that owns the 76ers. So a little nepotism creeping in there.
Whoa. Tommy, nepotism aside, what team or unless you want to work some more nepotism in, we're open arms. But what's a team or player fit or something that's got your eye?
I am really looking to see what Memphis does with its fourth pick. I think we sent that tweet around between this group here about Bill Simmons had tweeted about the Grizzlies' last like 10 to 12 years, their draft history, and just how atrocious it looked. And it was pretty brutal. And the guy who makes those picks, their GM, I think is Chris Wallace, I believe. He's still in charge of doing that. So they haven't moved on from him despite this horrible track record. And I'm telling you what, like there was some talk that Doncic, like his draft stock had really fallen the last few days, that there was a chance that he might fall to Memphis. There was even some talk of him falling to Dallas, which would be a no-brainer. I mean, him, Rick Carlisle, and Dirk, that'd be just a joy. But like to me, I think like we said before, it's probably going to go Ayton, Bagley, Doncic. I saw Woj just tweeted 15 minutes ago that Doncic has moved to the forefront of Atlanta's internal conversation on the third pick. So I don't think there's going to be much of a chance of Doncic falling past the top three. And with that being the case, like I just don't know what Memphis is going to do. Like, are they just so scared to whiff on another one? Are they going to go for someone who could, like, you have to remember that Mike Conley Jr. is going to be back. Like Marc Gasol is back for another year. That's a duo that has always won 50 games when healthy. Their owner just came out the other day and said, we think we're a 50-win team, which is pretty ludicrous. But, I mean, you just don't know. You don't know when those guys are healthy. Are they going to look for high superstar potential with like a Michael Porter Jr. or a Trae Young? Or are they going to go with a safer pick like a Jaren Jackson Jr. or maybe even a Mo Bamba? I have no idea what the Grizzlies are going to do. I'm really curious to see how they play it.
And Tom, I think that the answer to your question is something that we haven't talked a lot about, and I think that they've been looking to package that pick. If Doncic doesn't fall to them as I think the most win now player in this draft, then you read on Twitter, you read on Reddit that they're looking to move that for someone who can help them win now. So, I think you're right that is an interesting spot, because if they move down, then that changes the entire rest of the lottery as far as, who's available and who teams take. So
I like that idea, Kenny. I think, yeah, if your guy isn't there at 4, I mean, the 4 is just on its face. It's a very valuable pick. There are a lot of teams who I think would talk themselves into, like, who've probably fallen in love with Jaren Jackson Jr. and or maybe they want to jump up and take a flyer on Michael Porter Jr. But if the Grizzlies think that maybe Wendell Carter Jr. or even Mikal Bridges is their guy, then yeah, there's no use taking those guys at 4. Just try and get some more assets out of it. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, and this is going to shock you guys. I loved everything you guys just said. I think Memphis is in a total kind of pickle. Like everyone likes those top three, and then they have Deonta Davis from Michigan State, who's kind of Jaren Jackson just 2 years later, and arguably hasn't panned out. Kenny, what you said, I mean, we're not going to get into the whole Philly GM situation, but that's
I wish we got into that.
Still a thing. And the only add-on to your Philly thing would be, man, with those young guys and their developing, you draft someone at 10. Now, are you getting into the player you drafted development? Are you slowing down the guys you already have going? So that's crucial. And Greg, everyone already forgot what you said about the Wizards.
I said the Wizards used to be good. They just sucked last year.
No, you're absolutely right. It seems every playoff time we look at the Wizards and say, if they had one more like serviceable human body, they'd be good. Shout out to Kelly Oubre. But we're starting to wind down a little bit. I think we're gonna post our whole mock draft if you guys want to look at this. I think player wise is where I'd like to go, and just give me one player that you're bullish on, one player you're lower on. We'll spin it back reversey style. We'll go Tommy first. One guy you like more than you've seen around, one guy you like less than you've seen.
So I've said a couple that I like, that I'm high on Kevin Knox, I'm high on Trae Young. One guy who does intrigue me is Zaire Smith. Am I saying that right? I know Fuge in the mock took him 10th overall.
He's a Philly fan.
Yeah, and Fuge, I told Fuge we were doing this, and he said he has a 6 a.m. flight, so he's not going to be able to make it. But he wanted to let you guys know that the reason he took him there was he likes his defensive potential and athleticism. So there you go.
Well, so he's a 6'5", almost 200-pound guard. Like he didn't put up stats like at Texas Tech. He put up 11 points per game, 5 rebounds, less than 2 assists. But I mean, just the 6'5" model of an off guard. It seems like he can kind of be like a secondary playmaker. He only shot 1 3 a game, but he nailed it at a 45% clip. So it's promising that he has the potential to shoot the ball. I don't know, like I like just bigger guards like that. Like that's the kind of thing that reminds me of Frank Ntilikina. The defensive potential, the length, the athleticism. I think top 10 is a little high for me, but I mean just after like early post lottery in the 15-16 range, sure. I think that's a great pick.
Kenny Poon, who do you like? Who don't you like?
So I'm going to stick to my just kind of general philosophy and just talk about Villanova people. Jalen Brunson hasn't gotten much love like in the end of the first round, and I think when the mocks first started happening at the end of the season, he was a guy that was considered to be a guy that you would take at the end of the first round, and I think that he's going to be a good player in this league. I don't think he's going to be a star, but I think he's going to be a solid player. And watching him at Villanova for the last 3 years, he's just a very calming presence, and he's just a guy who knows how to play basketball. And at some point, that's what you need. So I think he could be, a starting point guard on some teams, but a very valuable backup on other teams. And he just brings a very interesting skill set. He's a great shooter. And one thing that he does that I don't know that I've ever seen any other guards do is he's a bigger guard, and if he has another guard on him that is smaller or skinnier or something, he'll take him into the post and play inside out. So he's a great passer out of the post. He's a great passer in the half court. And I just think he's going to be – he doesn't make mistakes. So he's going to be a very valuable player in this league, and I think he's going to be in the league for a long time. Again,
hey, wait. To go with that, good fit for the Golden State Warriors. That'd be a good pick.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think – Sean Livingston's not going to survive his contract. He's got another year after this year, and then – as repeat offenders of the luxury tax, that luxury tax is going to explode when Kevin Durant's about to sign a bigger deal. Klay Thompson's a free agent after next year. They're going to re-sign him. And then, boom, the number after next season, or after 2 years from now. After next season, it's going to be huge. But 2 years from now, it's going to be absolutely unbelievable, and they're going to need a new backup point guard.
And Draymond wants that supermax.
And Draymond will not be getting a supermax.
I agree with Greg on both those things because and I don't remember his numbers, but great shooter too. So that'll fit in with the Warriors. Great shooter, good passer, doesn't make mistakes. You know, he can pass it from anywhere. It's kind of like the Draymond Green situation, where he's a good post passer, and the way that the Warriors cut, that's a valuable skill. In terms of players that I don't really like, I feel like I already talked about it before, but the guy that I had in mind was Colin Sexton, who, I'm not completely sold on him. I think, like I mentioned earlier, that one of his top skills that people talk about is his potential to play defense because he has a lot of length and things, but I don't think he has the size or the build to do that yet. And maybe he grows into it. I'm just not comfortable at this time that that's definitely going to happen.
All right. Hey, I got two that I like. I already mentioned briefly Robert Williams, but he did a windmill in back-to-back NCAA tournament games, so I'm all in on him.
Smart.
Then we haven't talked much about him. I know we've said a couple of things, but Miles Bridges is freak athlete, and we're talking wings. You want a wing that's a freak, This guy was the leader on the team as a freshman and as a sophomore. Maybe he didn't show the development as a sophomore, but his stats were still good. I think the problem was that he balled so hard as a freshman that, when you have just a regular good sophomore season, people don't realize how good you are and appreciate it. So I'm high on both those guys. Hate to say it, but I'm sorry, Tom. I just don't really like Trae Young. I don't like short guards, and I think he's short. Colin Sexton also pretty short. I want my point guards to be 6'7", to be honest, but I'll settle for 6'3". And
Frank,
I don't think either of them fit that mold.
Frank just got bumped up to 6'6", I think. I don't know if you guys saw that.
All right, so yeah, he can almost be my point guard.
Yeah,
huge.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Miles Bridges because he is a freak, and he's another guy that I like a lot. And I don't remember what the talk was last year, but I feel like he was a mid-lottery pick if he went last year. So
I think that's right.
Yeah. So it's tough that 1 year later we're looking at him like towards the end of the lottery, but I think he's definitely got that potential to be a very good player in this league.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a Michigan State thing, and I don't think he'll be anywhere close defensively, but I think his offensive game, it reminds me of Draymond a little bit, which I know Draymond fully lost his shot, but Bridges has been handling the ball. He rebounds. He runs the court. I'm glad he got brought up. Tom, I know you gave some love to players. Is there anyone you want to poop on before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I really don't like Keita Bates-Diop.
Nice.
Mostly because he ruined our whole mock.
Nice.
Yeah, should we give the people that caveat? So just to explain what happened, we were doing a mock draft, picking who we liked, but I think a lot of us were picking like what we really thought was going to happen with like on the side also what we kind of liked. We were mixing it together, but my friend Kevin McGovern just straight up just picked a guy he liked, like maybe he knows the guy. He just picked him way too early. Picked Keita Bates-Diop as the 12 pick. I think on the 8 sites we averaged it out, he was like the 25, 26 pick.
He did the same thing for the Wizards.
He did the same thing with Kyrie Irving Jr., Kyrie Thomas. And so that just messed up our entire mock draft, to be honest with you. And that had people sliding as people didn't react. We had Colin Sexton slide all the way down to like 17 or something just because people were like, he's still there? I thought he was picked number 1. But,
we were still reeling. We were still reeling from McGovern's picks. It was like he was picking like they were his last picks, like he wouldn't get another one. They were so shocking that, honestly, people just forgot who was available. And it really kind of threw a wrench in the whole thing. But we'll still share it with everybody, with the listeners.
We had fun.
At the same time, I'm going to put the pro spin on it, and that happens at a draft sometimes. You don't think a guy's going to be there, and you've already talked yourself into other players. So all it takes is one GM to fall in love with someone. It won't be Keita Bates-Diop, but I think a lot of the names.
Hey, Jake.
We see it every year at the draft. Like, could there be a GM out there that loves Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Absolutely.
Jake, who's the DN that dropped to the Broncos? It could be like that. They said the Broncos had a trade.
Bradley Chubb.
Broncos were trading that pick. Bradley Chubb drops, and they're like, never mind.
And that's always the beautiful, and it's why I love the draft. There's so much smoke and mirrors, and like I shouldn't say I would love, because I don't want it to be mean to the kid. But like we just talked about Jaren Jackson, like nothing fully excites us on him, yet we're excited about Trae Young, Mikal Bridges, Wendell Carter, Porter. Like, someone like that could slip, because it could just be teams being like, oh yeah, we really like that guy. And then draft night happens and they're like, no, give me someone else. Trae Young can shoot. So I don't know. What do you guys have? Closing thoughts? And what else do we need to cover?
I didn't even get to talk about the rest of my Villanova guys.
Oh, so man.
I'm going to spend the next 2 hours telling you guys about Dante DiVincenzo and Omari Spellman, if that's cool with you. No?
That's cool with me, because I've got nothing going on. I think the other boys will get mad at you.
All right, so I'll give you the quick synopsis. DiVincenzo, I think he's going to be a good player. I think right now he's a little overhyped. He is a good shooter. He is very athletic. And what you will hear on the draft is that he is deceptively athletic because he's white. But in reality, he's just a freak athlete. I think at the combine, he had the highest vertical and the highest max vertical. So at that point, you just call someone athletic. Good shooter. I think my problem with him was he was occasionally just sloppy with the ball. And if you look at ESPN's analysis of him, one of the things they say is that he doesn't turn it over, which I can assure you is not true. If you go watch it's a little bit of an outlier, but if you watch the tape from the West Virginia game, he looked completely lost, and he spent the entire game just passing it to the other team, which is a problem because you don't want to do that because you want your team to score instead of the other team. But
Frank Ntilikina offense is what they call it.
Yeah, that is what Frank did for a lot of this season. Is occasionally he'd just dribble it up and then pass it to the other team. And that's what DiVincenzo did against a very good West Virginia defense. But he was much better in the national championship, and they won. And I think that was an aberration, but also the West Virginia game was an aberration. So I think he's somewhere between those two, and I think he'll be a good player. Omari Spellman's an interesting case because I thought he had no chance of going to the NBA after the tournament, but apparently he tested well. He's a bigger body. He was suspended for one season because he started high school too early. He started high school, and then he reclassified as an 8th grader. And then because of that, 4 years later when he went to college, they said he had to sit out a year, which makes no sense to me. But if he hadn't sat out, they probably would have won last year's national championship too. But we'll get into that another time. He's a very good shooter. I think sometimes he falls in love with a jump shot a little too much, and he doesn't go into the post enough. He's an okay defender, not a great defender. I think, the dream is for a lot of teams that he ends up as a Draymond Green type because he is a big body who can guard the perimeter a little bit, but also bang in the post, shoot threes, and block shots. So that's my rundown on those guys in case you wanted the insider information.
Hey, all right. Jumping off of that, I'm going to go with Jerome Robinson. Hey, guys, so Marvin Bagley came in first place for ACC Player of the Year. Who came in second place?
Jerome Robinson.
Jerome Robinson of Boston College. Pretty unbelievable. Team didn't even make the NCAA tournament. He just balled out. He scored 20 a game this year, coming off of scoring 18 a game as a sophomore. So, this guy could score the basketball. He averaged 23 and 3, 20 space, 3 space, and 3. So, yeah, he's a good player. Apparently, he's been flying up draft boards. We were hoping to have him back so we could make the NCAA tournament for the first time since, I don't know, I was in high school, which was 8 years ago.
Jared Dudley?
Yeah, something like that. Times are tough, but, go BC, go Jerome. Hopefully the Knicks I don't want the Knicks to pick you, but hopefully someone high picks you.
Tom, you got any bison for us?
Yeah, we just got 3 blind scouting reports, Tom. If you got something you want to go in on, give it.
Man, that made me wish that the Villanova players were a little higher on the mock draft. Like, that was some bottom-heavy analysis there at the end of the first round. But I mean, Kenny knows his stuff. One guy I like is Troy Brown. I don't have much about him.
He didn't go to Bucknell.
No, he went to where did he go? UNLV? I don't know.
I don't know. We're talking about
he went to Oregon.
He transferred from Bucknell to Oregon.
Yeah,
transfer. But 6'7" wing. We had him going like 18th in our mock or something like that. Was it later? Oh, it was much later. We had him going 21st.
I'm looking at someone else.
The aggregation of the 8 mocks was 18. But
I think that was McGovern's fault, though. I had him slotted at 18, and then the dominoes fell.
So one real quick point I'll make is like Chris Vernon from the Ringers when making this point is like one thing that's every mock draft has in common is that they're all wrong. They're all wrong. Not
this one.
Not only about who they pick, but like who should be selected. And like guys, big boards are always wrong. Like you go back and look through any draft and you're just like, what were they thinking? And you just go through this and you wonder like, who are the guys who are going to be like making us say, what were we thinking? But yeah, like this average of the 8 mock drafts, like the thing is like, we can't put too much stock in it. Like the consensus opinion or the group think opinion is just so rarely right that, I don't know. Draft is my favorite time of year. I love just the narratives, the trades, the drama. It's gonna be great. So yeah, we should live pod this thing. I'm down, but
I'm gonna be at a bar.
I'll also be at that bar because Kenny organized the party during the NBA draft.
Yeah, I didn't have the draft on my calendar when I was thinking about this.
All right, guys, we should probably wrap this up. But Jake, you and me, we'll live pod it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably be at a bar. No reason, but I'll probably be at a bar. No, I think that was good stuff, guys, and we're draft junkies, and there's a whole cult of draft junkies out there. So hope you enjoyed this. If this got to your ears, share it with a friend. Maybe not. If we get some of the Talkin Nick kind of hangover listeners to this, we're gonna start coming out with some Nick stuff soon. So unless anyone's got anything else, we appreciate y'all. Go the draft.
Go Knicks.
Go Knicks. Good to be back.